So what you're looking at is a super close-up of the bottom of a red oak leaf for a very special red oak found near campsite 80 at, uh, at the park. And those little translucent, gorgeous things are called trichomes, and what they are is little hairs that sit on the underside. You see a gold one there in the middle, and you see mostly other translucent ones and an occasional gold one here and there. You also, the little white areas are the stomata on the underside of the leaf. So this is sort of like getting you used to what can be really beautiful to look at under a microscope. But first, I'm going to have to like catch you up, hopefully, unless you're oak people, on oaks in general. And a good place to start is where are they? How many are there? Interestingly, oaks today are found almost without exception north of the equator. So you'll see you do see a worldwide map here showing the distribution of all the various kinds of oaks. And there's a good representation in North America, one little teeny bit in South America, and of course up through Central America. Mostly in Europe, very little in Africa. And the only place where we see the oaks diving down below the equator a little bit in Indonesia, Borneo, Java, Sumatra, just a tad. So of the approximately 600 species of true oaks, that's genus Quercus, found in the world, I mean, that's how many are found in the world. 200 are found in North America, or we could say uh, North and South America, the Western Hemisphere above the equator. 90 species are found in the United States. And we could, I think, say also about 90 species in the United States and Canada. And finally, in California, 21 species. So out of the 600 species, 21 are found in California. This is all oaks. Now we're going to, excuse me, dive a little deeper, a little deeper into how they're named. We're called Homo sapiens. That's our genus, our species. Oaks are a little trickier. They're going to have some extra subdivisions between genus and species. So below genus, we have something called subgenus. That sort of makes sense. But a lot of people have never heard of section, a subdivision of subgenus. And below that, series. And finally, we get our species aggregated into various series. On the right, you see a wonderful hybrid oak drawn by a man named Kellogg, California oak, early in the 18th century. So genus Quercus, true oaks, all fortunately in the Western Hemisphere, they're all in subgenus Quercus. You're going to see a lot of Quercus. Genus Quercus, subgenus Quercus, section Quercus would be the white oaks, though that section originally was sort of thought to be a worldwide group of oaks. You do see white oaks throughout the world. You do not see the golden oaks throughout the world. That's section Protobalanus. And you do not see my oaks, the red oaks, anywhere but in the Western Hemisphere as well. So why are these broken into these sections? Why are we segregating oaks in section Quercus, section Protobalanus, section Labati? Because they hybridize within the sections, but they never hybridize outside of their sections. So let's break it down and make it a lot simpler. Out of the California's 21 species of oak, we have 5 in Santa Cruz County. Oh my God, isn't that easy? One of them is a white oak. Hopefully, many of you know about the valley oak. We're not sure it actually is native in Santa Cruz County, but it is widespread in the San Lorenzo Valley and the watershed of the San Lorenzo River. The golden oaks, we have 1 of California's 5. But the red oaks are the most prolific, sometimes called black oaks. I'm sorry about that. Red oaks, black oaks, but today mostly red oaks. California has 4 species, 3 of which are found in Santa Cruz County. We have the coast live oak, Quercus agrifolia var agrifolia, the California black oak, Quercus kelloggii, and the Shreve oak, which is kind of the one that maybe some folks are not familiar with. Thank God there's a bunch of them in the park, so we're going to be able to talk about those a little bit. In the park, we have no white oaks. At least till now, no one has documented a valley oak at Henry Cowell. The golden oaks, I have not seen at Henry Cowell, but they've been recorded by a couple of botanists on Ridge Road and Pine Trail. And so that's a pretty easy identification. So we'll assume there are canyon live oaks. But the red oaks, there are two within the park that have been documented: the coast live oak and the shreve oak. So, again, a little more of a primer here. How did the California oaks get here? You know, so we just saw a map showing where they are, but how did they get here? So, this is a lot of words, and I'm not sure I'm going to go into this too much. I'm sorry, I've got my notes over here. There we go. Let's skip the words and go straight to pictures. Here we go. So this is a map of our continent 40 million years ago, or what was thought to be our continent 40 million years ago. So a white oak fossil was found in Canada that dates back to 45 million years ago. That's the oldest oak fossil in the Western Hemisphere. But it's unclear whether the oaks came from Eurasia into North America or started here and went into Eurasia. And there were other possible ways they could go other than this land bridge up through Alaska. As you'll see later in some of the maps, they could have shot through Greenland and over to Europe as a different way to either go that way or go this way. But the preponderance of thought is here they come out of Eurasia into North America through Canada. But you'll see there's no Baja California. There's no California. Basically, we've got the Pacific Ocean lapping at the base of the Sierra Nevada. So how do we get California oaks? Well, we're going to have to wait because most of California is underwater, excuse me, until 30 million years ago. So here we have the red oaks splitting off of the white oaks up here, and then shooting into eastern North America. And as California starts to slowly come out of the water, this map is 25 million years ago, we're getting a little bit of land starting to come out of the Pacific Ocean. We see oaks starting to move down that little sliver. And there the twain shall meet. Just so you know, these oaks, even though they may look quite alike, the eastern North America oaks are quite different genetically from the native California oaks. So different that the Mexican oaks, which you might think came from the California oaks, do not. They genetically are more closely related to the eastern North American oaks, where they split over here. Because guess what? Baja still isn't out of the water 15 million years ago. This is maybe too complicated, but let's just say there was a lot of splitting going on as the land started to pop out of the water. And all of this interesting splitting over just a few million years has made naming red oaks by scientists in California not so easy. So I'm going to show you the 4 species of California red oaks. We have coast live oak up here. We have the interior live oak over here. We have the shreve oak over here, lower right. And we have the California black oak in the lower left. Now, these are broken into quadrants because this was actually a study that was done in 2017, genetically and morphologically, to sort these things out. And the only deciduous tree in this group is the California black oak, lower left-hand corner. You'll see that all the specimens that look very much like California black oak were in this blue circle with blue triangles. Coast live oak, upper left-hand quadrant, and all the trees that were clearly coast live oak are in this orange circle with little, each of those little round dots represents a specimen that was sampled. Interior live oak, upper right in red. Shreve oak, Quercus parvula var. Shrevi in the lower right. Well, guess what? This, these very clear-cut examples of what these things are don't include all these little X's. And all these little X's actually outnumber the actual specimens that are easy to identify and represent all the hybrids, all the hybridization within this group. Because you can hybridize between 2, 3, or 4. You can have genetic contributions from all of these different different oaks, and it makes it very, very difficult sometimes to identify clearly, is this closer to that, closer to that? So please don't let hybrids make you uncomfortable. So here are the common F1 hybrids in Santa Cruz County. Now, an F1 hybrid is simply a cross between, say, in this case, California black oak and coast live oak. And the first generation, F1, is going to be a chase oak. And it looks sort of halfway in between. Yeah, it's got lobes, but they're not as deep. It's deeper than that. And interestingly, because it's a cross between an evergreen oak and a deciduous oak, it cannot make up its mind whether to lose its leaves during the winter. So they're really sometimes very easy to spot, where you'll see green leaves and golden leaves and missing leaves, and you go, okay, that one is a very possible hybrid. So that one has a name because it was easy to spot. Here's one we discovered at Henry Cowell. It's called a Wootton's oak, and it's a cross between a Shreve oak and a California black oak, and the actual tree is an F1 hybrid determined genetically right near campsite 80. Now, the area where we have a little more problem in Santa Cruz County is when coast live oak breeds with Shreve oak. They're both sub-evergreen, but they don't look that different. Those leaves, these are not so spiny. These are pretty spiny. These have more veins. These have fewer veins. But when you get something in between, oh man, is that an F1 hybrid? Or is it just something along this line that's not an F1? So it's unnamed. It has not been scientifically described, but it's common as can be, especially at Henry Cowell. Just to let you know, you should not feel bad about being able to take a hybrid and look at it and go, oh yeah, I know what that is. This was a scientific study done in 2004 on Mount Tamalpais, where 15 specimens were selected. Oh yeah, we know what those are. We are scientists. We are very clever. We know that they're all interior live oak, of course. Well, not one of them turned out to be interior live oak when they did the DNA work on them. Not one. Most of them were Shreve oak, and a couple were some weird hybrids. So again, it's all about the hybrids. And maybe this pie chart makes it a little clearer, where we show the composition contributed by the Shreve oak, interior live oak in red, coast live oak in brown, and look where they lie geographically. So let's look first along the Sierra Nevada foothills, and we see mostly red. That's going to be interior live oak. I guess that's why they're called interior live oak. And if we look at our neck of the woods here, south of San Francisco, we see mostly Shreve oak contribution. Though the more south you go, you get a little more coast live oak. And at the bottom, where the transverse ranges cut across, we start to see a contribution from interior, just as we see at the top. We see interior live oak bleeding around the top. We see Shreve oak bleeding over around the top as well. But then the question is, what are these two specimens, W22 and W23? They've got more Shreve oak in them than would be expected. Well, and also look at this one over U1. What is that red thing doing over near San Francisco? Mount Diablo, actually. And what it is that we would expect then, in addition to the genetic highway up north, around the top of the valleys, the genetic highway down south, around the bottom of the valleys, there's a genetic highway straight from San Francisco to Auburn, right? Well, no, there isn't anymore. But you know, there was. 200 years ago, is it 200 years ago? Let me do my math. Yeah, 300 years ago, along the banks of the Sacramento River, which then bleeds into the American River, forks the American River, there was an incredible oak forest a mile wide on either bank of these rivers, across basically at sea level from San Francisco to Auburn. And of course, there was going to be genetic interchange back and forth. You're going to get the interior live oak genes that were most fit coming west, and the Shreve oak genes that were the most fit going east, and then the steamboats began plying the Sacramento River and its tributaries. And within, this is the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, within 20 years, that entire oak riparian forest was gone. Free fuel, right? Didn't have to spend any money powering your steamboats. And now that historical wonderment is gone. So let's look at the most notable and interesting to me oaks at Henry Cowell Redwood State Park, and these are the hybrids, and they're few and far between. This is a map showing where they are, they're plotted. In the center there, you'll see ADV, that's the campground. And you can see the little outlines of all the various loops on the campground. Down lower, you'll see that kind of sandy area. We know where that is. And those are all there's one here, one there, but you can see they sort of form a pattern on the right side near Graham Hill. And then there's a few spotty ones here and there elsewhere. But I have bad news. In 2020, tree C was missing. It's gone. And because of all the trail work there by mountain bikers creating and widening their biking trails, I suspect that tree disappeared as part of that effort. And here, a lovely tree on your sister's trail. This one here, not a bad looking tree. It's kind of big and tall. You see the trail goes right next to it. If you didn't look down at the ground and see the leaves, because the leaves are so high in the tree, you would not have any idea you were looking at a fabulous hybrid. But apparently that tree, this is January of 2016 on the left, got in the way of somebody's handlebars on their mountain bike. And so they needed to attack it with some kind of a blade. And so by December 7th, 2020, this tree had been pretty savaged over here in this area. To this day, it's okay. It's healed itself. Thank God it was an older tree and not a younger tree. So there it is, tree B, adjusted quotes in 2020, most likely mountain bikers adding handlebar clearance. So that's a sadness. But if you want to look at some lovely hybrids without having to work too hard, the ADV trees are located right in the campground. And the most notable tree is the wooden oak found behind campsite 80. And here it is in the spring. And you can see it's got all the beautiful green leaves. It's multi-trunk tree. They're very close together at the ground behind these bushes, but they spread out above. And then in the fall, you can see, oh, look at that. In winter, wow, there's something going on here. I see some green leaves. I see some brown leaves. It hasn't lost all the leaves. It's lost a few over here. And that's how you spot a hybrid. And this is a nice older hybrid, the crown jewel at the park. And this is what the leaves look like up close. And I don't know if you've ever seen oak leaves that look like this at Henry Cowell, but now you have one tree you can visit where they do. You might have a question, though. Maybe you don't have a question, but at any rate, this tree shows examples of California black oak parentage, and it does. One parent is California black oak. The other is Shreve oak. So where's the California black oak? It doesn't occur at Henry Cowell. Well, it does occur not far away. I've seen it on Highway 17, and I've investigated those specimens. And I'm guessing there are many other options in private land holdings west and south of Glenwood, but not that I'm aware of. But less than 8 miles away, we have a wind-blown pollen parent potentially, and there is a scientific study with California oaks that shows, at least to the satisfaction of the people who did the study, that they could document a several hundred-mile pollination from Northern California to Central California. So 8 miles, nothing. So up there you see potential daddy. Here you see all the mothers and the offspring down in the lower left. Do we have an excuse me? Do we have another potential hybrid in the park? We do, right between campsites 75 and 77. There's Ray Wooten, for whom the Wooten oak is named, looking it over years ago. And then Dylan McManus discovered one at campsite 40. And this poor thing was hanging out there. This is the only plant I could just see that going for firewood some night. And so Dylan came up with this fabulous idea to draw attention to the tree with this lovely sign right next to the tree saying, "Hey, this is a sensitive plant. Please don't mess with it." And so hopefully to this date, it's still working, and I hope it continues to work. And again, these wonderful leaves of these hybrids. And to let you know, Dylan's been out at campsite 75, and that little tiny tree you saw out there between the two campsites, relatively well hidden, but people do seem to be traveling back and forth. So a sign for that one, and a sign for the big Wooten oak behind campsite 80. Thank you, Dylan. Okay, so with CCC trail crews apparently active out at Henry Cowell again this year, as they often are, I have a cautionary tale to share. So tree 13, my tree 13, I number trees at all the sites where I work and study, and I shouldn't have I should skip 13 just like they do 13th floor and 13th row in some airlines, but I didn't know it would turn out the way it did. But this is on Powder Mill Road at the southeast corner of this older prescribed burn. And tree 13, gorgeous, beautiful. Oh, look at that stem gall. You can see there was a little insect in there that's created a little home for itself in the stem of this tree. And there's Ray, and he is pointing out this tree, which, as you can see, is clear to the top of the picture. It's been laboring as undergrowth for 20 years probably, and finally finds the strength to shoot out into the sunlight above, and it's well off the trail. It's not even close to being on the trail. So there's Ray in July of 2019. And then there's Ray again, November of 2020. And you can see a COVID mask because now we're into the COVID deal. But sadly, he's not looking up or pointing over. He's looking down. And the reason he's looking down is because that's all that's left of that beautiful tree. I didn't have the heart to cut a little section off and sand it down and count growth rings. That would have just hurt my soul more. But, you know, all we can do is hope for the future and look at another tree. I call it a tree, tree 15, also on Powder Mill Road, further up the road. And I call it a tree because really it's just the barest of ground cover. And we don't know. Will it take decades before it can finally get above its neighbors for some sunlight and turn into a tree maybe 50 to 100 years from now? But there is hope. There are plants out there that are working hard to survive. And all I can ask is for you all to be on the lookout for these rare Henry Cowell Redwood State Park oaks that have California black oak as one parent, most likely the father, and in many cases unknown other parent, either Shreve oak or coast live oak as the mother. And here's tree the behind campsite 80, looking back at you, some gorgeous leaves, and another picture shooting through the tree into the surrounding hillsides. And I just thank you for being interested and paying attention, and I wish you luck in your exploration.